Well, you know that there's only one thing people are interested in more than crime investigations, and that is Disney secrets.
I think you're probably right about that. And I think that's a great way to start our interview. So I don't even need to do an intro. I think that's our intro right there.
You know, there is a lot of Disney this, Disney that. Several books entitled Disney, and I'm actually in a few of those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a shocker to me. I was in a bookstore in Mesa, Arizona, while my wife was shopping. I was kind of thumbing through books, and I saw this something, the mouse exposed or something like that. It was a picture of Mickey and had Disney on it. And I'm really interested. And I'm reading a few of these very top secret reports that this author somehow got a hold of. And they were my reports of cases that I was working on.
Wow.
Crap. And I brought it to the attention of Disney, and they're wanting to know, who is this person that had clearance to get these reports, because it's
Yeah.
public record. And of course, I was the suspect, but I said, it ain't me. So
They thought you were trying to pull a Spencer in Visions of Glory thing where you were telling the story, but it's not really your story. but it's not really your story. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce you. Just for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. This is the Midlife Revolution channel, where we talk about making small changes that change everything. And we had Randy Watts on a couple of weeks ago to tell his story with his involvement with my cousin Alex Cox, who was an accomplice of Lori Vallow Daybell. And he tells some fascinating stories about a short time that he knew Alex in his life. He's also written a book called Feeling Empty, which is available on Amazon. We'll put the link to that in the show notes. And I'm also joined today by Jean Judson of Latter Daily Digest. Welcome, Randy and Jean.
thank you. It's a pleasure as always, Megan.
So good to see you again. And Jean is the host of Latter Daily Digest, where he and his co-hosts, whoever they may be, honor other creators. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your channel, Jean?
Yeah, so I've been going on for about a year and a half now, done like 150 shows, and we have authors or other podcasters or other people that have special type jobs that are just interesting to me. I don't care if anybody cares. I don't care if anybody thinks it's interesting else, just for me only. But anyway, usually people have a good time no matter what. And so I discovered Randy a month and a half ago and didn't know what a gold mine I had at first. And then I started thinking, Randy's got to be worth 20 shows over the next year or two. And then you were able to have him on a couple weeks ago. And now we're doing this show, and I know that he's written other books that would be fun to have him on and have him talk about those in the future. So
Definitely.
I appreciate Randy.
Yeah, so Jean invited us both to a panel discussion on Tuesdays with Tim. And during that panel discussion, Randy revealed that he knew my cousin Alex, which I was shocked by. So, of course, we talked in the after show. And that's how I got him on my channel. And he also talked in that after show about some secrets that he can reveal as a former detective for the Disney. Is it the Disney Corporation, Walt Disney Corporation?
I was actually a detective for the city of Bay Lake, which is Disney. It's their municipality.
Got it. So the city of Bay Lake is owned by the Disney Corporation. And does that encompass all of Disney World and Epcot and all of the parks that are right there in the Orlando area?
It actually encompasses everything, the entire Walt Disney World Resort, which is all of the parks, the resorts, all of the attractions there.
Okay, excellent.
And by the way, Jean, I called a lot of things, but I've never been called a gold mine.
That's right.
I just wanted to refer to Gene as the connections whisperer, because he knows everybody and gets us all connected. So thank you to you, Gene.
Yes.
That's right. I'm happy to do it.
Gene is the original hype man for all of our channels and all of our interviews. He comes into the comments every time telling everybody to like, share, and subscribe. So I hope that everyone will do the same. Do the favor of going to Ladder Daily Digest, go and subscribe to his channel. Gene has fascinating guests on all the time in a wide variety of different locations and different, as he said, job titles and life situations. And the interviews are always fascinating. So make sure you go follow his channel.
Thanks.
Yeah. So Randy, can you start off by telling us maybe how you came to be hired by the Disney Corporation, and then maybe walk us through what a typical day was like for you as a detective for the corporation?
Absolutely, Megan. And I hope that you have 12 hours for this show. About how long it take me to go through all of the experiences and secrets that we know. But back in 1990, my wife and I decided to go on vacation to Florida. We had 4 children, and it was time to kind of get away from the kids for just, a little while. So we arranged care for them. And we decided to go to Florida and go to Walt Disney World. And we figured if it was really fun, then we'd, the next trip we'd take the kids and go. So we traveled to Orlando, and we both just had this fun idea that instead of going to Walt Disney World, we were going to go to what's called the casting center, where they hire people. It was just so off the cuff, but I was working and she was working both in Mesa, Arizona, but neither of us really gave a rat's rump about the jobs that we had. So we went into the casting center and waited our turn, and my wife got a job as in the food and beverage part of it. And I told the guy that was interviewing me that I wanted to be one of those guys that walked around in a suit and tie with the secret earpiece and the microphone and all that. And he said, well, that's our detectives. We call them investigators, because at Disney, they have their own language for everything. Bodyguard is actually an escort, and the hostesses all have their names for their particular positions. Instead of pest control, instead of exterminators, they call them pest control. So the detectives were called investigators. And he says, man, what are your qualifications? And I explained to him that I'd had police experience. I was a police officer, and that I spoke fluent Spanish, having served a mission in Madrid, Spain. And we just hit it off with each other. And he says, I'm going to hire you full time as a detective. And
That's amazing.
I was ecstatic, because they don't hire full time. They only hire part time, and you have to work your way up to full time. But he just he was very kind, and we really got along well, and he hired me up. Now I thought that my first day on the job was going to be doing exactly what I wanted to do. But I showed up and they sent me to wardrobe to get dressed. I'm like, wardrobe? I have plenty of suits. And they said, no, you're starting in patrol. You're going to be like a patrol officer. I'm like, what?
I see. So a little bait and switch.
Right? Yeah. So I went to the investigations office. I said, look, I'm supposed to be an investigator. They kind of chuckled and they said, well, you don't start like that. You have to be a patrol officer, and you need to know the property. And so I did the patrol thing. They gave me a kind of a police car, to be in with the red lights and everything. And that was nothing new to me. So I did that. They told me I needed to do it for 6 months, which I did. But during that 6 months, I drove the property, the complete property. Now, people don't realize how big Walt Disney World is. It's 47 square miles, which is 30,000 acres. It's the size of San Francisco and double the size of Manhattan.
Wow. I had no idea.
Oh, it's enormous. And I drove and drove and drove. And when I first started, I kept looking for the different parks. Once you get out on the roads and you're driving all around the resort, Disney has set it up to where you can't see the Magic Kingdom. You can't see Epcot Center. You couldn't see the Hollywood Studios. It was called Disney MGM Studios at the time. They're all invisible from the road. And they do that on purpose. They have big, huge berms with beautiful greenery and plants. And you kind of have to know where you're going or follow the maps to get to the park. And then when you come into the parking lot, it's like, the angels sing and there's the park.
Yeah, so I just have to pause for a second to say the fact that they have InSpeak, they have their own language, right? And the fact that they've built this city as sort of a labyrinth to keep people in, and that they don't show you, like, you can't see the big Cinderella castle from the street, which is what the icon of Disney, right, is the Cinderella castle. That's what everybody wants to see, but you don't see it until you get all the way there. So this is sounding to me a little bit of a combination between a casino and a cult.
Well, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
A cultino.
They control, it's all about control. They control the tourists.
Yes.
I love Disney, and I will always be loyal to Disney because they treated me so well. As a matter of fact, they treat their employees like the real VIPs, not the guests. They treat their guests very, very well. And that's why they have such an incredible business going. But they treat their employees just as well. It's all about empowerment with them. Empower the employees, teach them, and let them do their thing. And they really exercise that. So I love the way they operate.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
Randy, so if you were patrolling this large area, would they get calls sometimes, or you would have to drive for like 5 or 10 minutes to get to where they needed a bunch of officers all at once?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We may be, I actually lived right there on the edge of property so that I could respond in an emergency. But yeah, it was sectioned off so that we each had our jurisdiction. I mean, our jurisdiction was the property, but we each had our areas that we were working. But often another investigator would call and say that, he just had a serious situation, injury, homicide, anything like that.
You back up.
By the way, people say, Walt Disney, what on earth would they need detectives for? But like I said, this is the size of the city of San Francisco, so anything can happen. We had homicides, we had suicides. But here's the first secret is that nobody dies on Disney property.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because you went right there. I mean, I wasn't going to go there until a little later, but you went right there already. So
we would respond to emergencies, and we'd have our ambulance. We have our own fire department, our own ambulance services, medical, and just to touch on that, no one is pronounced dead until they cross the Disney property lines. Then they can be pronounced dead. But I'll get into that later. But I remember my first day in uniform, in my security uniform or police uniform. I needed some lunch, and I had to learn how to get to the cafeteria underneath the Magic Kingdom. And we're going to talk about that. But I walked into the cafeteria, and it was like I had walked into a Disney movie, because here's Cinderella on one side and all these little tiny people in their Huey, Dewey, and Louie, costumes, and every character you can imagine is eating lunch in there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is actually the real deal that I'm in.
And just to be sure, you're not dressed in the Keystone Cop uniform, right?
Well, no, but when I worked at the studios within the park during that 6 months of uniform. They actually do dress up as Keystone Cops with just to kind of match the whole
Main Street vibe.
Yeah, the Main Street vibe of the 1940s, 50s movie scene. So,
Yeah,
and
so that's one thing I will say about that I love about Disney is that they do an excellent job of making magic feel real, you know. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear that they had you in a costume, really.
Yeah.
The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause, though, is when people see you on the Disney street dressed in a Keystone Cop costume, do they know you're an actual officer, or do they just think that you're another character?
you know, it's funny. They do think I'm a character. I used to entertain myself when I would work the studios because I would stand by one of the props that they had, one of the thousands of props, and I would stand perfectly still. And they would come by looking at the props and stuff, and they would think I was a statue. And then as they'd approach and get near to me, I'd say, "Can I help you?" And they're like, "Ah!" So yeah, I had fun with that. I just want to give you an idea of how big the property is. I know I talked about it a little bit, but if you took Disneyland in California, and if you could take it in a helicopter and lift it up and go over to Walt Disney World, you could set the entire Disneyland down in one section of the parking lot of Walt Disney World. As a comparison, Disneyland is 500 acres and Walt Disney World is, like I said, 30,000 acres. So it's a whole different ballgame there.
So Disneyland would fit in a corner of the parking lot
Yes.
for Disney
Yeah.
World? Wow, I had no idea.
Right. And each morning one of us would have to go up in a Bell jet helicopter and would circle the property entirely because there were poachers, bad guys that sneak in through the swamps. And so in the helicopter, we'd do a complete circle. In a Bell jet helicopter, it took an hour to go around the property. So that gives you an idea, because Walt Disney was very smart when he purchased the land for Walt Disney World. It was all swampland. They got it for pennies on the dollar. So they bought as much as they could. And then they drained the swamps where they needed to and started construction and building. And it was a secret. Nobody knew that it was Walt Disney that was doing it. So,
Yeah, because they did it under Buena Vista, right?
They were incognito, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So that's some serious forethought on Walt Disney's part to, number one, form an entirely new corporation to buy up as much land as possible, and to do it sort of under the plan of like making this gigantic place, to buy so much land and then to have the vision to turn it into something amazing. But I just want to comment one thing. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I don't think that wading through a swamp in Florida to get into Disney World free is the best idea.
Unless you're a gator hunter and you're hunting,
Exactly.
which they did.
Yeah.
But, speaking of gators, I want to get into a few of the secret parts of Disney that the public doesn't see. First of all, you'll notice that no matter how many hours you spend and how many days you spend at one of the parks, especially the Magic Kingdom, we'll use that as an example, you'll never see anyone repairing anything. You'll never, a pipe breaks, in other theme parks in other parts of the world. They always have maintenance people that have to run and take care of it. Walt Disney World has an intricate tunnel system underneath it. When I say tunnel, I mean the size that a huge truck can actually pull into and circle all the way around the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom. You'll never see an employee from Adventureland going to having to cross over through other lands within the park, because they simply just go backstage, as we call it, and drop down into the tunnel and walk to where they need to walk and then come back up. Just like when I went for my lunch at the cafeteria, I entered from backstage down into these tunnels and had my lunch and then came back up, and no one ever saw me in the Magic Kingdom unless they needed to. So I could respond to incidents almost instantly. I had to memorize those tunnels, but I could go from one land to the other in a matter of seconds rather than minutes, and pop right up, because it's just an amazing shortcut. All of the repair work is done from underneath the streets, the water systems. You'll never see anyone dumping a garbage can, because they have what's called, what do they call them?
Like chutes?
Utilidors. They're garbage cans, and they're always themed for the land that they're in. It's not just a park-like garbage can. It's got a theme to it. But when you put your garbage in there, people don't realize, but it's sucked down into the tunnel, and it all goes
Wow.
spot where this huge amount of garbage accumulates, and then the garbage truck can come in, load it all up, and go out without anyone ever seeing.
Wow. So say that word again. What did you call it?
It's a utilidor. It's a system of suction that sucks the garbage down. It reminds me of like the bank, when you put the tube thing in and it sucks it up to the teller, and then that's kind of what it's like.
So do they have trash can liners in the trash cans, or it just goes into that chute?
It just goes into the chute. Yeah.
So nobody ever has to take out the garbage in Disney World.
No, it's taken care of from underneath.
That is magical.
That's the one thing about Disney, is they were always thinking about, tomorrow, we'll say, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, Epcot, was, planned for, new ways of doing things. And so they always had, like, what do they call them? Imaginariums, where people were imagining things, thinking about different ways to do things, animatronics, all the advancements that they, made. And so the whole company was always thinking about better ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Sure.
So while we're on the subject of garbage, we might as well talk about bathrooms, because I just want to say I personally have an abhorrence for public restrooms. I hate going to the restroom in public places. They're always dirtier than I want them to be, no matter how clean they are. But I do have to say, I went to Disney World, and my very favorite bathroom, my very, very favorite public bathroom in the world is there in the Magic Kingdom. They have a bathroom that is shaped like the tower from Tangled, the Rapunzel movie. And that was my favorite bathroom. It is beautifully painted like the inside of the Tangled Tower, as you might imagine. There are beautiful little wooden benches in there that make it look kind of magical. And of course, it was beautiful and clean. So what can you tell us about bathroom secrets?
I don't have a lot of bathroom secrets out. They are constantly in the bathroom, because it's the happiest place on earth. And it really is. And it's the cleanest place on earth. Have you ever noticed that you never, ever see gum? Well, you probably haven't noticed, but you can walk the entire parks. You'll never see gum on the sidewalk, because Walt Disney World doesn't sell gum. Of all the things they sell in their shops, they don't sell gum, because they know that when people are done, they just spit it out. And that's
smart.
Yeah, it's really intelligent. They plan everything. It's so themed.
Now, when they do the bag checks at the entrance, do they check for gum?
No.
So someone could bring in their own gum.
They don't confiscate gum, but yeah. It just, if they sold it, it would be a lot more, common for these yucky gum spots to be on there. Now,
Sure.
It's because when the sun drops and the nighttime comes, everything lights up, and the fireworks happen. Tinkerbell makes her flight, and once the park closes and the last guest is gone, and everyone wants to be the last guest out of there, then the park lights up like daytime. You would think it was daytime because there's all these powerful lights that light up the streets and the rides and all the attractions. And that's when the cleaning crews for the upstairs come in and work all night, making sure that it looks brand new for the next morning. So it really does become like a daytime thing at night at Disney. It really comes alive. I wanted to mention that there's a lot of vermin at Disney, in Florida, in the swamps. You can imagine the mice, the all of the creepy crawlies, the bugs, the gators, the gators everywhere. Well, they're not allowed. There's a department, it's called pest control, not extermination, but pest control. And they're the ones that we call if there's a gator that has made its way into the swimming pool at one of the resorts. And that happened almost, on a regular basis. And they come in swiftly, and they toss marshmallows into the pool, and gators love marshmallows. So they'll chomp and chomp and chomp and right into the trap. And they close the trap up and take it to our conservation area that's full of gators. And they're pretty much confined to that area. But I can't count the number of times that we've had a gator swim into one of the swimming pools, and guests don't really like that. For some reason, they're not comfortable swimming with an alligator in the pool.
No, I can't imagine they would be. But I know how to catch a gator. They love marshmallows. So from now on, when I visit Florida, I'm just going to make sure I always have marshmallows in my pocket so that I can lure the gator away if I need to.
They always fall for it. But I would say that one thing that pest control is not allowed to do is have mouse traps set out in the hallways where the mice, want to go. They don't have any mouse traps out during the day. And the reason for that is they don't want any kids looking and seeing a mouse trap and associating that with Mickey Mouse.
Of course, yeah.
So no mouse traps will ever be shown. No restaurants. There's 30 resorts within Walt Disney World. And you can imagine how many restaurants. None of them are allowed to serve duck in any fashion. They don't want the kids seeing duck on a menu and associating that with Donald Duck. It's all these little things that they pay so close of attention to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for their brand. It's very smart. They probably have a lot of people who review changes and new things to make sure that they don't accidentally release a cartoon that's problematic and then have to recall it several days later.
Exactly.
Are some detectives dressed up just like tourists and they're sort of undercover?
We're going to get to that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm assuming that Randy has a plan and he's just working his plan.
Just like Disney, where they want you to go a certain way around the park.
Exactly. Right. We're accessories at this point.
Just one more unseen interesting point is that the castle, Cinderella's castle at the Magic Kingdom, has a beautiful apartment up in the top floor of it that Walt Disney had built because that's where he wanted him and his wife to stay when they came to Florida, that they would be able to stay in that apartment. But sadly, he passed away before they could utilize it, but they kept it intact. So it was a nice place to go up and look out the windows to see over the kingdom. And it's where the kingdom kids, I think they call them, the dancers and all the performers that perform in front of the castle, they all have changing rooms up there in the castle near Walt Disney's apartment. All kinds of things going on, On the main street, if you go down Main Street, you see all these cute buildings, depending on, the area is how they're themed. But when you enter in and you go down Main Street, you'll see American flags flying on top of all of the buildings. But the secret is they're not really American flags. They will be missing a star or a stripe. So they're not actually American flags, so that they don't have to comply with the standards that the nation has put on flying American flags.
Oh, I see. So they don't have to take them down every night and protect them from weather, and they can replace them at will. They don't have to dispose of them in a certain way.
Exactly. And it's just another thing that no one would ever notice. I don't think about that.
Yeah. So while we're on the subject, or while we briefly talked about the apartment in Cinderella's castle, I seem to remember a few years ago, maybe it was a lot of years ago, that Disney was running some kind of a promotional or a deal of some kind where you could actually go stay in Cinderella's castle. Is that a thing that still happens? Do you know?
I honestly don't know right now, currently, if it still happens, but it is one of the most luxurious, fancy apartments you'll ever see, with incredible Disney memorabilia and the cells from the different movies. The animators create these cells that are part of it's laden with all these beautiful ornate decorations. So that wouldn't surprise me. It wasn't going on while I was there. It was just nobody had, well, I had access. I had the keys to the kingdom, if you will. But typically nobody had access up in there. So I really enjoyed going up there and just sitting and feeling the energy. And I always thought I could feel Walt Disney's presence. And I'm sure he walked the hallways at night. I just have no doubt about that. In his spirit form, of course.
Yeah.
But
so where do you want to take us next? Because you're in charge of this ride, apparently.
No, I don't. I want you to run the podcast. I have so much that spills out of me. I will tell you about the Imagineers have come up with something called smellitzers, which pump smells out. When you're walking down Main Street, what you smell is the bakery. You smell those Rice Krispie treats that they're so famous for. And I've never had Rice Krispie treats better than Disney can make. That buttery cookies and all that, they pump the bakery smells out into the street, and that draws people in. When you go to the Haunted Mansion, you walk in and it smells like a musty old attic. It doesn't really smell like that, but they pump that smell in there. Same with the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's got that watery, musty smell to it. It's all by design. It's all to add to the theming of the park. And it's just one thing after the other. When you're walking through Disney, you want to pay close attention to the smallest minute details, like columns on buildings. You'll find little secrets, little Easter eggs all through the different parks. And you'll have to Google Disney Easter eggs because there's so many. I could never name them all. But, like some of the water slides in Blizzard Beach, they have these incredible water parks. Some of the slides have Easter eggs that you can only see when you're on an inner tube flying down these curly slides. And if you don't know where to look, you're not going to find them. In Norway, they'd have a huge painting of all these Norwegian, what do they call them? The people on the ships.
Vikings,
thank you. And if you know where to look, you'll see Mickey Mouse on one of those ships wearing tennis shoes. And just all these little fun things, it's a real kick in the head.
So they've gone to great lengths to make sure that your experience in the park is one that encompasses all of the senses, right? They want to make sure that you see these little Easter eggs, that you smell the right smells, that you taste the right tastes. I am amazed at the amount of forethought that's gone into it. And I know that casinos do a similar thing with the smells and with the sights and sounds, but in casinos, I always see, overflowing trash cans and smell unpleasant things. I don't think I've ever smelled anything unpleasant when I was at Disney.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And you know, I'll interject this that Walt Disney World, along with all of the theme parks, are shopping malls. I mean, really, that's what they are, with attractions to attract people to that mall. When you go on a ride, you don't just exit back out into the park. You always go through a gift shop. And after you've had this great experience on the ride, you want to share that or keep a memory of it. So you walk through a gift shop, and you're way more likely to buy the gifts that pertain to that particular ride.
Especially after you've had an exhilarating ride, you're in a good mood, you're ready to go ahead and buy that $300 lightsaber.
Yes, exactly. You know, there's another thing that people will never see unless they're part of the Disney staff. We call it the zoo crew. It's all of the characters. They have their own department down in the tunnels, and they come up through the tunnel in the area that they're supposed to be working. But here's what's really cool. They have something called a control center, and it looks like something right out of the Enterprise on Star Trek. It's all these screens and all these people, almost like a control tower situation, because of all the parks and all the restaurants and all the resorts. There can never be more than one Mickey Mouse above ground at the same time. If Mickey Mouse is in Epcot Center, he can't be at the Magic Kingdom. You know, they have hundreds of Mickeys. To be a character, you have to match the right size. You have to learn the walk. The Minnie Mouse girls and boys, there's boys in the Minnie Mouse costumes too. They have to know how she crosses her feet. They have to know how exactly she signs the signature. So it's nothing when you're backstage to see some tall, lunky guy walking along trying to get Goofy's walk down. You know, they all have to walk and act the exact same way. So you don't want a kid going up, you know, kids and parents, a lot of times one group will be in one park, another group will be in another. They never want a child to be able to say, Daddy, we're at Magic Kingdom and we're watching the Mickey Mouse show. And we don't want Daddy to be able to say, well, yeah, we're with Mickey over here. You know, I sound like Goofy there. They never can have more than one Mickey or Minnie or Donald or Huey, Dewey, Louie, any of them. They can't be in more than one place at a time. So
Yeah.
the way they control this over the entire property is just amazing to me. During the Mickey show at the castle, all Mickeys are grounded until that show's over. And you know, I don't know how they pull that off. To me, that's just incredible.
So they have a job or several people that are coordinating the movements of all of these different characters in all of the different parks. So just for people who may not know, that Disney World encompasses several parks, right? So it's the Magic Kingdom, which is the main park. That's the one most people probably think of with the Cinderella Castle and the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And then there's the Animal Kingdom, right?
Right.
And what's the main ride in the Animal Kingdom?
The Animal Kingdom did not exist when I was there. It was under construction, but they, you know, they have several rides just like all the other parks.
Right.
You've Animal Kingdom, you've got Epcot Center, like Gene was talking about.
So if I remember right, the Animal Kingdom, if I remember this correctly, which I may not, I know that they've got the Jungle Cruise. That's a classic one, right? And I think that do they also have the Matterhorn over there?
You're talking about the Magic Kingdom, right?
Oh, is it in the Magic Kingdom? Okay, so I'll just say I don't have a lot of experience with Disney. I've been a couple of times to Disneyland, and I've been a few times to Disney World taking students on trips. And whenever I took students, they would give us one day in each of 4 different parks. So how many parks are there total?
So right now you've got the Magic Kingdom, Epcot Center, the Disney Hollywood Studios
Okay.
and Animal Kingdom.
Okay.
And the Magic Kingdom Park regular.
Right. Aside from that, you have the sports complex, you have the huge water parks, and the resort that I had the privilege of opening up because I eventually went from investigations. I decided that I wanted to be, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not even going to say it. After I'd been at Disney for 2 years, they announced the Euro Disney project, which now is called Disneyland Paris. And they were selecting the best of the best to go open it up. When I say the best of the best, I mean people that have been there a long time. So I walked into my boss's office and I said, "Hey, Carl, I hear that they're selecting a crew to go to Paris to open that up, and I'd like to be a part of that." And he laughed. He said, "Ha ha, yeah, right, Randy. You've been here 2 years. These are the people that have been here 20 years that have that privilege." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Who's the one just doing the selection?" And he said, "Oh, it's Brenda down the hallway. She's the one selecting the crews." I said, "Oh, cool. Well, I thought I'd give it a try." So I walked down the hallway and I saw this Brenda and I said, "Brenda, bonjour." She looked up at me. I says, "Mon cours serait commandé à vous?" She goes, "Oh my gosh, you speak beautiful French." I said, "Well, thank you. It's just something I've, learned throughout my life." That she says, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Why, are you looking for people that speak French?" She said, "Yeah, I'm selecting the crew for Euro Disney." "Oh, interesting. Yeah, I speak French. I speak fluent Spanish. I can interpret, but yeah, I just thought I'd let you know." Well,
Serendipitous.
the next,
Sneaky. Resourceful.
I don't speak a word of French. That's a song I learned in junior high school,
Oh my goodness.
French. So the next day, I received an invitation to be part of the opening crew at Euro Disney, and they sent me to be in charge of a counter-terrorist squad because they'd had a lot of threats. And with my police experience, I was comfortable with that and very excited to do it. That's probably a whole different show because
Yes, I'm sure.
the experiences there were pretty incredible.
So did you purchase the Rosetta Stone, How to Speak French then?
No, but thank heavens, the day I arrived, they provided each of us a French interpreter. And my interpreter looked exactly, I thought it was John Travolta. And he walked up and I thought, I really did. And it was just a guy that looked exactly like him. But I had the interpreter, so I didn't have to worry about it. When I got there, I was assigned my counter-terrorist squad, and they were all from the French Foreign Legion that Disney had. Oh, I'm getting into it now. I saw, first of all, my only job for the first 2 weeks was to walk the property or drive the property. They gave me a car. They gave me not an apartment, but a lodge in their Wilderness Lodge park that they have in Paris, just like in Walt Disney World. And that's all I did was learn the property. I had to know every square foot of the fencing. I had to know where there's a hole under the fence that anyone could crawl through. I spent a lot of time just doing that. And then came time for me to get my squad. These guys showed up. I had a knife expert, a incendiary bombs expert, firearms, all these people that were experts in their own field, people who were self-defense experts. And they turned these guys over to me. Well, they had long, scraggly hair and facial hair, beards, mustaches. And I was just told to make them Disney. I said, okay. So the first stop was to go to the barber shop and get all their hairs cut, get all of their beards shaved off. They were all fit with suits and ties. I was given a card that was good for all the cafeterias and restaurants in the parks. And even before the park opened, all of the restaurants and things were open so that the staff that was there from the United States and all around the world could utilize the food areas. And these guys, they just ate their weight every day, anything to keep them happy, which I did. And then came opening day. And that's where that's when the crap hit the fan, because we did have some attacks and things. Something that, one of our jobs as investigators was to keep things under wraps, to keep things from getting out to the press. Disney had actually built train tracks going from Paris, because at Euro Disney, at the time it's called that, was 20 miles out of Paris. In Marne-la-Vallée was the name of the town.
This is 1992?
Yes, actually, yes. And Disney was, they built a train track going from Paris train station right out to Disney, so people could just hop on the train and go right out. And that was a huge thing, because Parisians then didn't have to worry about how they were going to get there. It was on the opening day. I got a call at about 4:30 in the morning, and they said, Watts, you need to get to headquarters right away and wear very casual clothes and nothing that says Disney. I said, okay. So I put on some Levi's and a shirt and got to the headquarters. There were farmers coming from all over Europe with their tractors, several carrying trailers full of hay and straw bales. And they set them up on the train tracks so that the train couldn't get by. They set them in all of the entrances to Euro Disney, and several were lit on fire, and it was chaos. And they told me, we want you to infiltrate the group, keep everything hidden, your communication devices and things, and keep reporting on what's going on. So I was given a pitchfork, because they had all these implements that we could carry to look like we were part of the big riot. And I took this pitchfork and I went into this group. There were probably, in this particular area, the main entrance, there were probably 500 farmers with weapons in their hands, because they weren't going to let anybody into the parks. This was all protesting the Yankees coming in and populating their country.
Anti-American.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very anti-American. And so I have this pitchfork in my hand. Mind you, I don't speak any French. They're hollering all these, commands, and get over there and get over there. And I just sat on my bale of straw and would nod my head and report what was going on. And finally, the Parisian
authorities?
Yeah, like ours would be the National Guard. They came in and cleared out the train tracks and got all the hay bales and everything moved off and forced the farmers out. But that was a pretty spooky situation. Talk about a baptism by fire for the counter-terrorist squad.
Literally.
That's on top of the 500,000 people and 90,000 cars on the road that were trying to get in.
Yeah, they were blocking it all, and yeah, it was quite a melee. But
so people in the United States especially may not understand this about France, but their culture is a culture of protest. They will protest just about anything at just about any time, and they don't care about the inconvenience to other people they want to carry out their protest and get their way. So do you think that it was just because it was an American company, or was there something specifically about Disney that they didn't like?
It was representative of America. That's it. It's all about the coming in, and I think they took it as an insult that the Americans thought they were superior and would come in and open this big, huge attraction. We had to stop wearing any Disney clothes when we'd go into Paris, into the subways. We had to take off our rings, our Disney clothes, so that we weren't known. And one
carry a baguette.
Baguettes, yeah. One interesting thing, I ended up, my partners and I, we had a weekend off. And so we went to Belgium, and we were in this big, beautiful plaza in Belgium. And I felt safe there because we're not in Paris anymore. And some elderly man came up with the cane. He was all shaky and wobbly. And he says, "Oh, you must be Americans." And I'm like, yes, we are. He said, "What are you doing in our country?" And I said, "We're just visiting from Paris. We're opening the Euro Disney complex there." And his whole demeanor changed, and he took his cane and raised it and started hitting me as hard as he could. And I'm stepping back trying to avoid this cane, and he's going after my partners, and the last thing we wanted to do was make a big scene. But I thought for sure we'd be safe in Belgium, but no, we got attacked, and we were chuckling, even swinging his cane, because he's not going to do any damage to us. But yeah, we had to stay pretty incognito while we weren't on property.
The more you talked about Disney demeanor they got.
That's good, Jing.
Always great for a dad joke. Love it.
And how did all the protests affect the opening day? What was it like in the park in the afternoon?
It was delayed, but it all started at about 5 a.m. And by opening time, most of it was cleared away. I thought that we were keeping things under wraps, but this was a national story, and CNN was there. And I got a call that day from a friend of mine from the United States, because we had access to telephones 24/7. And he said, I saw you on the news." I'm like, "Really? You saw that?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I know that it was widely publicized, but they were able to clear it off, and the opening went very well. Now, the first 2 days of the opening, before the public, they had all celebrities. Michael Eisner, the CEO, had flown in every celebrity that you can think of. He paid for their airfare. He put them all up in our resorts, the fanciest, the nicest. Politicians and presidents, our president, vice president, everybody showed up. And there was no one else allowed in the park but celebrities. And even that got chaotic because there were so many of them. You had to keep the celebrities in line. And that's one of my jobs, was to escort celebrities and make sure that they were not hassled or any problems. And I had my terrorist squad that they would follow me. They'd have to follow me and always keep me in their eyesight. And then we had hand signals in case I needed them to attack or to protect.
Wow.
So no matter where I went in the park, I talked about backstage. Well, my squad would stay backstage and watch me through the areas that we had designated so that they could always keep me in their view.
Yeah.
And,
well, I can only imagine what a difficult job it was to have the park full of celebrities, each one thinking they're more important than the last, and trying to keep them all happy. That must have been a crazy job.
If I may drop a name or two, I was with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He was my principal. He was the one I was to watch during that particular day. And they had a special VIP luncheon, and Jean-Claude and I went in, and then I would just stand at the door and let him go in and eat and do all that. Well, Eddie Murphy and his crew were eating at the end of the hallway there. Not hallway, but it was like a train car. And he was eating towards the end, and Jean-Claude Van Damme said, "Hey, Eddie." And he walked towards him, and Eddie's bodyguard stood up, great big, huge, big man, stood up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Murphy does not speak to people while he's eating." And Eddie Murphy heard this and watched it and didn't say, "Oh, come on over." So Jean-Claude says, "Ah, oui, okay, I'll remember that." And so some of the celebrities in line, I had to arrest Eddie's brother for beating up his wife. And I told him, I said, "Look, I'm going to turn you over to the Parisian police." I had to call Eddie Murphy and say, "This is what your brother's done." And he's like, "Well, I'll watch him." And I said, "Well, look, I'm not going to turn him over to the Parisian police, but if you don't keep good care of him and keep him in line, he's out. He's going." He says, "Oh, yeah, man, I'll do it." And I'm not a fan of Eddie Murphy anymore. I used to be a huge fan, but the way everybody there in that park, it was ridiculous. Yeah, it was.
It's always telling, when there's a celebrity or notable person, the way that they treat people when they have nothing to gain, from that interaction. It's always very telling what kind of a person they really are.
Yes, it is. The next night of the semi-opening for just celebrities, all the celebrities were there, only now Disney allowed the paparazzi in. So if they were paparazzi, they could come into the park, because that's the best publication you could ever get. The best advertising in the world is let the paparazzi in.
Free publicity.
That really got chaotic. And I was with, during that time, I was with Michael J. Fox, who is just an incredible man. I love Michael J. Fox. What a great guy. And I can't say enough good about him. But Candace Bergen and Steven Spielberg came up to me and said, "Hey, you're with Disney?" I said, "Yes, sir." And they presented this little boy to me. And Candace says, "I think this is Jane Seymour's boy, and he's sick, but we can't find Jane." And so I put the word out that I needed Jane Seymour, and she was off watching some other show, thinking that her son was in good hands, with all the celebs there. And she came running up, and I said, "Jane, we have your boy here and he's sick." She goes, "Oh no." I said, "Don't worry, we can get him to our infirmary." She goes, "How can we do that?" It's because it was the crowds were so massive of all the celebs and all the paparazzi out there. And it was pouring rain, by the way. So everyone had their umbrellas up. I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "I want you to crawl under my overcoat," because I had an overcoat on with my suit. "I want you to crawl under behind me and hold on to my waist." So she did. She got under my overcoat and held on to my waist. And I'm thinking, if only my friends could see me now, because I've got Jane Seymour placed under my coat. But anyway, we took her boy. I called for a wheelchair, and I just walked straight to the infirmary with her trailing behind me, walking, simultaneous with me. And we got her boy to the medical place. I was then called to go to a show at the Star Wars attraction. I was to watch over Cher and Tina Turner, and I was their guy. So after they performed, getting ready for the next show, they went into the big dressing room, and I stopped, and Tina Turner turned around and she said, "Hey, you're our guy, come in." And I said, "Well, I just wanted to let you change." She goes, "We've got nothing you haven't seen before." So I'm sitting there, and Cher and Tina Turner are in their nothings, you know, in their underwear.
Birthday suit.
And I'm thinking, once again, this is one of those moments, you know. I'm going to jump back to the Magic Kingdom for a minute, though.
Sure.
Gene, you, if we see, this is how we would catch bad guys. And we caught some of the most infamous bad guys that would come. See, one of the biggest crimes that was committed at Walt Disney World was counterfeiting money. What you'd have these counterfeiters from all around the world that would come thinking that was a great target, because they would print, let's say they're printing $100 bills. They would take a $100 bill and give it to the store and buy a trinket of some sort, and they'd get all the change in real money, and they're passing counterfeit bills. We had to know counterfeit money like the back of our hand, and we had to teach all the shop owners. And the minute a shop owner would report that they thought there was counterfeiting going on, I would call my Fox crew. Now, each of us detectives were assigned a crew for our use. And these were the people that were dressed as tourists. They were actually, you know, former police officers, and, you know, they had to qualify, but they dressed as tourists. And when I called my Fox crew and gave them what was going on, they'd instantly surround the store. And this is how bad guys are caught there. They'd surround the store and they'd keep me apprised of exactly where these guys are going. And they just follow them through the parks as they exchanged all the money. In the meantime, the people in the shops are all aware. And so they're taking these bills that are presented and setting them aside, but pretending like nothing's going on. Now, here's something fun about the Magic Kingdom. You can't drive there. You can't get into the Magic Kingdom unless you either ride the boat, ride the monorail, or ride a bus. But no car can even get there. So when the bad guys do their thing, once we're onto them, there's no escape. So while my Fox crew was following and collecting evidence, I would call Secret Service. We had a Secret Service agent that was always on call for us. And he'd respond, and I'd meet with him in the back area. And I'd say, here's what's going on. Here's how many we've got. And they'd say, okay, well, we're ready when you are. And so once everyone was in place, I would wait for these guys to come out of their last shop. And I'd walk up to them and, you know, I'd say, hey, how's it going? You know, oh, fine. I said, is there anything I can help you guys with? No, sir. I said, okay. And I'd put my arm around them and I'd say, hey, here's what we're going to do. And I would keep smiling. I wouldn't let the smile leave my face. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take you backstage because we know what you're doing. And I've got a whole bunch of people surrounding you, but you don't know who they are. I do. And they are watching you. So you can run if you want, but you can't go anywhere. You can't get anywhere. And usually figure out that they can't really take off running because they're surrounded. So I'd escort them with my arm around them, like I'm just being a buddy to them, escort them to the back where Secret Service would make the arrest. If they did run, and we had a few that got out of the park because they suspected that maybe we were onto them, it was simple. It actually made it easier for us because let's say they took the monorail. Well, what they didn't know is I could stop the monorail anytime I wanted to. I'd just make a call and say, hey, I need you to stop the monorail while we get our men in place, Secret Service or the sheriff's office, whatever we needed. I need you to stop the monorail, or I need you to kill the boat, you know, whatever it took until we were in place. And then the monorail operator would say, ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry for the delay. We're just waiting for the last monorail to clear the station and we'll be on our way, you know. And once the monorail got there, we'd all be waiting as these bad guys got off and take them out, take them away. And, you know, if they started running, we had people everywhere that could get them. So don't try counterfeiting or committing fraud at Walt Disney World because they'll get you.
Or anything else for that matter. And you are trapped. I mean, that's classic criminal mistake. You don't have a getaway plan, and maybe they did have a plan. They just didn't realize how well coordinated Disney is, because it's just as you're saying, you can make the transportation stop, and everybody else thinks that it's just a mechanical something. And I like that they say, oh, we're just waiting for a train to clear the station, because then nobody's nervous or anxious. They're just saying, oh, well, just a little delay. Maybe someone's taking a long time to get off the train or something. Everyone's at ease. Nothing's ever amiss at Disney.
One big team. It took an effort between the shop, the shop workers were really the first ones to start reporting, and then we'd have the foxes, who would be just a huge help to me. When they weren't catching bad guys, the foxes would be in the shops watching for shoplifters. And of course, it was the same type of deal, only I didn't get involved with that because I had bigger fish to fry, with my other responsibilities. Although I did have an experience, and Megan, I think actually both of you have probably heard about it, but
well, you teased this out just a little bit on the last episode that we did. Is this about the character you would never suspect?
Exactly. Yes. The fairy godmothers from Sleeping Beauty, their names were Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Fauna being the gray-haired sweet lady, and they all have their wands, and they'd be in all the parades and all of the shows, and everyone loved the fairy godmothers. And down underneath, as we call it, they have...
Oh, wait, so just 1 second. Let's rewind. So just to be clear, this is a little old lady who plays the character of Fauna in the parades and in the park, right? Okay.
She was one of the 3 fairy godmothers. I was down in the basement. They have, if there's any merchandise that they're not selling anymore, or that might have a chip on it somewhere, or some paint peeling off, anything, it was sold to the cast members, i.e., employees, for pennies on the dollar, really cheap. So we'd go down there and we'd buy our Disney statues and figurines and anything, watches. And I was down there doing some shopping, and I happened to notice this elderly lady, and I couldn't help it because, my eyes were always scanning the crowd. And there was about 5 employees in there doing some shopping, and I see this lady tuck one of these figurines into her, but she had a vest on with big pockets. And I'm like, oh, no, she didn't, And so I just kind of watched her, and soon a watch goes in there, and a few other small pieces of merchandise. And then she starts to walk out of the store. I didn't know who she was at the time, by the way. So it was just my job. It's just what I did. I was on duty 24/7. So I ran over to her and I said, hey, hi, I'm Randy. She goes, hi, I'm whatever her name was. I said, I'm an investigator. And I couldn't help but notice that you forgot to pay for several items. She said, no, I didn't. I said, yeah, actually you did, and I'm sorry. If she would have said, oh, I'm sorry, and gone back and paid for them, never thought a thing about it. She said, no, I didn't. And I said, yeah, don't make this difficult. Let's not do this the hard way. She says, I'm not. Well, I said, what department do you work in? And she said, I'm in the zoo crew. And I said, okay. And so I called the manager of the zoo crew and had her respond. And when the manager saw who she was, she goes, no, you didn't. And she put her head down. And anyway, she was terminated. And I ended up being the reason, well, she was the reason that I ended up having to be the guy that caused this dear fairy godmother to lose her job. But, there's all kinds of experiences like that. I remember, as far as celebrities that I watched, and here's another little Disney secret, is that anyone who's, really recognizable and people are going to know just at first glance, i.e., Michael Jackson or Mariah Carey, and just any celebrity that was recognizable, we would escort them, bodyguard them. And I was assigned someone named Tommy Mottola. And I'm like, who the hell is Tommy Mottola? Well, he was the head of Sony Music. He was the one that made Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, and all of these. He was the one that I had to, my job was to keep the celebrities from bothering Tommy. So we met, and he was a great guy. And he says, look, because he was engaged to Mariah Carey, and so Mariah was with him. He said, look, don't worry about me. No one knows what I look like. No one knows who I am. Worry about Mariah. I said, okay, so he would have me take her to the parks and to the parade. And I had this little trick of, all of these buildings that you see along Main Street that are so cute are actually office buildings behind the facade. Behind the scenes, that's where the guts of Walt Disney World takes place, that and in the basement. And so I would take the celebs and take them backstage. I'd go up a set of secret stairs, the same stairs that Tinkerbell would use before her flight. And in Mariah's case, we went up there to watch the electric light parade. It was the one that happened at night with all the lights lighting up. And so we had perfect seats because we were up on the building and no one would bother us. And she started singing, "When You Wish Upon a Star." She says, "Randy, sing, come on." So her and I duet up there. Another one of those, if they could see me now moments. And every evening, every night, Tommy Mottola would have me take Mariah swimming while he got a massage up in the room. And that was way after hours, but there are very few celebrities that I didn't have great experiences with. Tom Cruise, a gentleman, an incredible guy. People make fun of him, but I'll tell you, there's no more of a gentleman than Tom Cruise. And he was with his Australian wife. What's her name?
Nicole Kidman.
Kidman. Yeah, and I'd go lay out at the pool with him and chat and talk. And that's an interesting thing. When I was in Paris at the pool, and that's where I was with Tom Cruise, these women don't wear tops. They just wear bikini bottoms, monokinis, as they call them. And it was an exercise of my willpower to keep my eyes glued on Tom and Nicole. And fortunately, Nicole she had her top on, but I'd have to keep talking to them and pretend like I didn't see all these beautiful French celebrities with their tops off. And I'm sounding like a dirty man now.
You're just a man, right?
Just a man. That's right. And I would struggle under the same circumstances. So I want to validate you for that. Nice going to be able to accomplish that.
One thing I was wondering, Randy, when you first had a celebrity that you were guiding, was that memorable?
Well, yeah, every one of them are memorable.
Right.
Well, I honestly can't tell you who the first one was because there were so many of them. I do know that the experiences I had with him, Michael Jackson was a kick in the head because Michael's a frequent visitor at Disney. And so I was assigned to him. And he asked that, he called ahead and he asked that we all look very casual. He didn't want the suits and ties around him because he didn't want people knowing, who he was. And so we show up, I'm wearing a pullover with some slacks. And
you're thinking he wants the whole gang to blend in the background.
And I told my foxes, just be casual. This is, So he comes walking out, and what is he wearing? He's wearing his vinyl red leather jacket with the silver glittery gloves and the white socks and his fedora hat. And he came walking up to me and he says, "How do I look?" You know, I'm like, "Michael,
You blend.
exactly, you're blending into the crowd here." And I chuckled, you know.
I wonder if people seeing that scene thought that perhaps it was an impersonator or somebody that, you know, Disney had hired who was in costume, or if they thought it was the real guy.
I think most of them knew it was the real deal. You'd have to
Yeah.
be really good, exact look-alike. But yeah, that was a memorable experience. I also did his sister Janet and his sister Latoya. And Michael and Janet were at Walt Disney World, and Latoya I had in Paris because she was performing at Moulin Rouge in town doing her strip routine. And we had to keep a close eye on her because she would wear very revealing things. And, you know, people in the parks, speaking of that, people would get into the parks in this summer heat, and a lot of these foreign women would just take it off, take their tops off. You know, and I would always call one of my female foxes to come and approach the lady and just explain to her that, you know, she had to have a top, you know, that would cover her. And if she didn't have something that was appropriate, we'd give her a Disney shirt to wear.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just Janet Jackson that would have wardrobe malfunctions?
No, yeah, Janet did have she was performing and she raised her arms up and her breasts both flipped out. And this is in front of families and kids. And yeah, I ran up with my coat and hurried and, you know, had her put it on over her and escort her off stage. I told her maybe she might think about either changing her moves or changing her wardrobe.
You might want to have a different shirt for that particular move.
Exactly. Here's another unknown fact about Walt Disney World is you've got to know what road to take within the property. It's just a little tiny, wouldn't even know it was there, but it led to a landing strip. And that's where extreme dignitaries and Michael Eisner and Walt Disney, back in the day, that's where they would land. And then they would be picked up by one of us and taken into the parks. Here's what the Imagineers did, Gene. You were talking about Imagineers. They figured out that if they made little, you know, when you're going along the freeway and you get too far off to the side and there's all those little bumpy, you know, that wake you up and you get back on the road.
The rumble strip.
Yeah, the rumble strips. Our Imagineers figured out that if they made them all different sizes and different spacing, that they could actually, as the tires of the plane would fly in, it would run over those rumble strips and play a Disney tune. And the particular tune was zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. And so they thought that was really cool because they wanted to put them at the entrance to Disney as people are pulling off the freeway and going towards Disney. Their tires would play all of these Disney songs. And I just thought that was incredible. And I never paid for lunch after that because I'd call my associates and I'd say, "Hey, you want to make a bet? I'll bet you that I can make my tires play Disney music on the landing." They're like, "Yeah, right." I said, "Let's bet lunch." So we did. And I'd meet them there and I'd say, "Hop in." And we'd go down you had to go 35 miles an hour. Or let's say on the landing strip, it wasn't, but on the entrance was 35 because that was the speed limit. On the landing strip, I don't remember what the speed was, but I'd get going fast. And I'd hit those things and sure as heck, my tires would just sing that song. And I'd say, "Now let's go to lunch."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I also, let me go back to this view here. I also wanted to ask you, I know that most visitors to Disney cannot get access to any alcohol in the Magic Kingdom or the Animal Kingdom, except maybe there's a special place that you can, but you have to be somebody to get in there. And is it available in Epcot or not? People want to know.
Yes, it is. It's available at what you're talking about is Club 33, which is a very, very, very exclusive club. Now at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, there's at least a 10-year waiting list to get on, to become a member of Club 33.
Wow.
It costs between $35,000 and $50,000 initial fee, and then $35,000 a year to keep it active.
Wow.
It's yeah, and not just anybody can get in there. The reason they call it Club 33 is because that's its address in the park. It's very nonchalant. People don't know where it is. The doorway is printed what they call getaway green. It doesn't, Disney knows how to attract people with different colors, and the color that they painted the doors is not even, doesn't capture your attention. The reason they had to have an address was so that they could serve alcohol. Alcohol can be served in there because they had an address and they could get an alcohol license, even though it's within the park. Now it's called Club 33 in Disneyland, California, Club 33 at Walt Disney World. And then at Epcot Center, I had to write this down because I didn't know the names, but in Epcot Center, it is called, the Constellation Club at Epcot and the Spotlight Lounge at the studios. It was so popular, they had to open these up too. But yeah, the public can't get in. And you have to know how to get in there. You have to know where to go to even get in, because it's all, if you want to see it, Google Club 33. And
well, I found it when I was at Disneyland one time, just by happen chance. One of the characters from The Princess and the Frog, the big, tall voodoo doctor. What's his name? I can't remember his name.
I don't know, but I know what you're talking.
Anyway, he was sort of standing off in the shadows, true to his character. And my oldest daughter and I were there, and we heard this sort of rumbling behind us, and he was going, hey there, are you looking for a miracle? Doing his voice or whatever. And so we went over and talked to him and took a picture with him and everything like that. And then, he went on his way to go and try and trick someone else. And my daughter and I were looking back through the pictures, and I saw the door. I was like, oh, this is where it is. I see it. I found it. But I can't get in. So you have to know the process. Like, have to know who to contact to get in there.
Yeah, you have to contact Disney admin, and you're put on a list. But you have to, like I said, the money's just incredibly a lot.
Yeah. So if you pay that fee, once you get into the club, is everything in there free? Do you still have to pay a bill? What goes on in there?
Still pay for your food, but the food is incredible. And of course they serve the alcohol, and the service is just unprecedented, well, like any Disney restaurant, but especially at Club 33, anything those people want, they just request, and whatever it takes, they'll get that for them. I could go into Club 33 because I had to sometimes. I never had to answer there, like someone's, dying or someone's causing a problem. I would just go in for the hell of it, just because I could. But
That's right.
They had to respond in an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
Megan would have been treated like a princess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they would have said, now, which princess are you?
I've always wanted to play Ursula. I always thought that would be really fun, but I don't think they would ever cast me as Ursula. I always want to play the bad guy, but they always don't want to cast me as the bad guy. It's very frustrating.
If you're the right height and you have a desire, you can become Ursula, because they take care of all the makeup and they make your hair like it needs to be, and these princesses go through a whole routine, and they walk out looking just like Mary Poppins or Sleeping Beauty or Ursula. Uh,
I had a cousin who played Ariel at Walt Disney World for a little while,
oh
and
no,
that she gave us some of those secrets that they had to learn how to do the autograph exactly the same because you can't have one Ariel autograph looking different than another. And she told us some of those things. That was really fun to learn.
yeah, yeah. You'd go into the cafeteria, and there'd be these people sitting there with a pad of paper, notebook, just signing, 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 trying to get the signature exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I
So
said,
Randy, does that mean your family members get free entrance, year passes or anything like that for working there for Disney?
yeah, yeah, my family could get in. And then when I became a manager, I ended up becoming a resort manager with Disney. I'm actually the first one to ever go from law enforcement into Disney management. And I'm going to tell you how that happened. But once you become a manager, uh, an upper management person, you can get as many people a day in as you want. So it's amazing how many of my old high school friends suddenly got in touch again and, hey, we're coming. And, I was just wondering if maybe, I used to let people in all the time. The only thing was I had to meet them at the entrance and, you know, let the people know that they're with me. And so they could go in and they had all the privileges. And yeah, it was a perk, definitely. And my kids, oh my gosh, my kids were, for the first year, they were there every other day and they know better than I do. And it's funny because when we would pass, those grocery store parking lot carnivals that they'd set up with the little cheap rides and everything, they'd see one of those and they'd be like, "Can we go there? Can we go there?" I'm like, "Wait, you want to go there? And you could go to Disney?" And they're like, "Yeah, but we've done everything at Disney. We just want to go to that carnival." Oh my God, I warped you guys.
Nothing would be as good as Disney after you've been in Disney.
Right? Yeah.
And I think, in fact, I've often said, if I ever do get married again, I am going to go to Disney, even if whoever I marry doesn't want to go, because I can't imagine anything better, a better place to go after you've been married to be treated like a bride than to go to Disney. My daughter actually went on a Disney cruise for part of her honeymoon, and she said she felt like a princess the entire time. People are always saying congratulations and giving them free stuff and free food and free t-shirts and all that kind of stuff just because they were the bride and groom. They wore their little bride and groom ears and everything.
Well,
Well, that makes me wonder, Megan, if maybe you can do one of those things where you sponsor a cruise or some resort thing, just like who is it? Cults to Consciousness. She did a thing in Costa Rica, like a getaway.
Yeah, and Zelf on the Shelf did the same thing where they took some of their channel members, their followers, supporters
That's
on
right.
a trip. So maybe I'll do that. That sounds
Yeah,
like fun.
there you go. Shalise Ansola. If she watches this, I want to make sure that she knows I remembered her name.
All right.
I had an office at the Grand Floridian. The Grand Floridian is the premier hotel. It's that great big one that is a replica of the Del Coronado Hotel in California. It's the one that they do all the filming across the lake with the fireworks and the castle and everything. Beautiful view. And I had a little office, closet size, tucked up in there somewhere on the third floor. And I got a call from, well, I won't say his name, but he was the general manager of the Grand Floridian. And he called me into his office. He says, "Look, I've got a problem." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Someone stole my wallet." They had a big festivity outdoors, and he was part of it as the general manager. He said, "Someone stole my wallet. I need it back." I said, "Well, tell me what happened, And he said, "Well, he set his stuff down and thinking that no one there would be dishonest enough to take his things." And he told me that, he went back and put his pants on and his wallet was gone. He says, "If you can get it back for me, I really would appreciate it." I said, "Okay." He said, everything's replaceable, but the pictures that are in there. He said, I'm gay. And people didn't know that. Back then it wasn't quite as acceptable, although 90% of the Disney cast members were, but he was very self-conscious about it. And he said, I've got pictures of me and my partner in there, and I need that wallet back if you could do anything. So I called my Foxes and I said, look, I want you to scan this property like never before. And I want all the garbage cans. Now at the resorts, they don't have the suction garbage that goes down. I want all the garbage cans emptied, everything cleared out. And I called for the dive team and I said, I need you to scuba dive all around the resort and see if you can find a wallet in the lake. Well, lo and behold.
Thinking that somebody might have just taken the wallet, taken the money, and tossed the wallet somewhere.
Exactly, which is exactly what they did. They tossed it into the lake. So thank heavens, the divers found it and brought it to me. I went in and I slapped it on George's desk. I didn't even open it. I said, there you go. He goes, oh, what can I do for you? Is there anything that I can do for you? He said, I'll do anything, because he had a lot of clout. He was a vice president. And by the way, he's now president of Walt Disney World, the entire thing. I said, yeah, if I think of anything, I'll let you know. Well, I got to thinking about it and I thought, I'd like to be a resort manager. So I went into his office and I said, George, you know how you said you'd do anything for me? I'd like to be a manager, a resort manager. I'm ready to step up a little. He said, okay, buddy, I'll line up some interviews. So we lined up 24 interviews because that's how much it took to get into management. And I was interviewed by all these different managers and people. And then they, lo and behold, they accepted me and put me through the Disney University for resort management and made me manager of the largest resort in the world, actually, which was the Caribbean Beach at the time, 30 rooms. And that's how I broke into resort management. And then I ended up going back to Paris to help them establish the proper resort etiquette and stuff like that. I didn't make it all the way through my education because the manager of the Caribbean Beach ended up having a severe back problem and went in for back surgery and had to retire. And they called me and they said, hey, we're pulling you out of the school. You've learned enough. We're going to make you manager of the Caribbean Beach. Man, I'll tell you what, talk about, once again, baptism by fire. I went in, I didn't know anything about where keys were. And, all these employees started pouring in for the night shift. And they're coming into my office asking for, can I get this? Can I get that? I'm like, I don't know. Fortunately, there was an assistant that showed up that kind of helped me through and helped me learn where everything was and where my office was. And, I digress, but I ended up going into resort management, and then I got to go over and help open, and I'm talking from hard hat to work boots, help open the Disney's sports resort, which was even larger than the Caribbean Beach. And
wow.
That's an incredible complex. And it's one of the more economical resorts to stay at Disney, because no matter where you stay, if you're staying at a Walt Disney World resort, you have free transportation to and from the parks. And they just take good care of you. And yeah, so I went into resort management, and that's, like I said, it's a whole different topic of experiences within the resort area.
Yeah. And then you went from there to pumping poop out of toilets.
No, I actually, my folks both got ill. My mother got Alzheimer's, and my dad got a form of dementia that wasn't Alzheimer's. And so I came back from Florida and, I shouldn't say that. I had a job offer while I was working at Disney from the Peabody Hotel, which is a world famous hotel where the ducks, and they needed someone to manage their hotel in.
What state was that?
Well, this was Florida where I was, but it was Tennessee where they needed the manager, because they had just built one in Orlando, but they needed a manager for the Peabody Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. So I went there. But then from there, after, I think it was 6 years, my folks got ill and I had to go back because I had to take care of my dad, and my mom had to take care of their sisters, and they all, both of them had dementia. So that was a party. And so I ended up becoming a private investigator. Another interview for another time, but I ended up becoming a private investigator for MJM Investigations, and worked doing that until Mr. Potty came along. My friend worked for this restroom company. At the time, it was called A Company, just because they wanted to be first in the phone book. And they had this specialized water systems and things that needed me to sell. So yeah, I went to work for them. So that's how I exited Disney, but the doors are always wide open to go back if I ever wanted to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I loved everybody there. I didn't have one enemy at Walt Disney World. I've got plenty not there.
Well, now you teased this out a little bit at the beginning of our interview, but I want to circle on back to talk about homicides in the park, because I think this is really fascinating. So you mentioned that nobody dies on Disney property. So within the city limits, nobody dies. However, you did have some deaths happen in the park.
The first one could not be kept secret because he was an individual who had a spat with his lover. They both worked at the Contemporary Hotel, which is right there next to the Magic Kingdom. And he leapt. His partner, his lover, broke up with him, and he was so distraught he jumped off and he hit the monorail track and cut him in half.
Oh my gosh!
The rest all went down into this plaza on the 4th floor, where shoppers and guests were all eating, and and here you have the remains hitting the ground. So
how awful! Ugh.
By the time I got up to the 4th floor, they had covered his remains with a blanket. But there were just way too many witnesses to keep that from getting out. And another occasion, and I wasn't there at the time, this was after I left, but a poor little boy, I think he was 4, wandered out at the Grand Floridian Hotel I was telling you about and fell into the lake off the dock. And before his parents could get to him, a huge alligator came and chomped on him and took him under to the bottom of the lake. And, that was not, you couldn't keep that, that was a nationally publicized thing. So we just had to manage damage control the most we could.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about that. It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was horrible. When we'd have someone die on property, a lot of times there were employees or there would be kidnappings, and most of the time it ended up to be domestic situations between the employees. But if someone passed away, we would still call the ambulance, even though I would know that they were gone. We'd still call the ambulance, and they'd load them up and take them to the hospital or to the morgue, wherever they deemed necessary. But they were pronounced dead once they crossed over Disney lines into the county, because no one dies at Disney. No one is injured at Disney.
Was it just that the Walt Disney Company didn't want to have on someone's death certificate that was the location of their death, or what was the reasoning behind that? I guess I understand from a publicity standpoint, but
yeah, from a publicity standpoint, they just don't, if someone's kidnapped, they don't want that getting out. Now, just like I explained about the counterfeiters, we'd also handle kidnappings like that. And we always ended up returning the child to their parents. But no, we didn't want it getting out. And Disney would make sure that these parents were compensated and taken care of, and so that they didn't tell everyone that their child was abducted at Walt Disney World.
Wow.
Yeah, and injuries, we had, oh my gosh, the one little, this, I try not to even think about this, but we had, Disney provides strollers for people with babies. And this mom was trying to fold up the stroller and was having a difficult time. And when she did finally get it, this little baby, her little finger was caught on there and it just snipped her finger off and, just clean off. So, needless to say, those people were compensated dearly. Disney doesn't lawsuit; they just compensate people, and
Yeah.
they pockets, and they're able to make sure that those people get enough money not to go talking about what happened.
Mm.
Deaths was at the Haunted Mansion. It was a high school group that was there, and one of the first things they say in every ride is please stay in the cart. Keep your hands and feet in the cart at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Car that usually comes over and locks. But this high school student it was a girl, and she was thinking she'd be funny. And it was, it's dark in the Haunted Mansion. And all of the things that need to be covered up are covered with black felt so that it doesn't show up that there's a brick wall or that there's a tunnel or anything like that.
Yeah.
And she made her way out of this bar and jumped onto the walkway beside the ride. And she's trying to catch up to her friends that were about 3 carts ahead of her. And she's running as fast as she can. And she smacks into a wall that was covered in felt. And it fell onto the tracks, and she was killed. And we had that was kept under wraps pretty well. Once again,
So she was critically injured in the park and died out of the park.
Right. Yeah. We had a guy at you mentioned the Matterhorn, Megan. The Matterhorn at Walt Disney World was called Space Mountain. Same camel, different hump.
Yeah.
We had a guy who was, I guess he'd come to the park intoxicated or something, but he ended up standing up on the seat of the ride and was relieved of his head on a railing that went across the ride, and slumped down and fell to his. Well, he was all, but his body fell down into the inner workings, and so we had to recover that. But once again, they were paid off, and it was kept secret. And I don't blame Disney for it, because it's when people break these rules, not because Disney's liable. They could go to court and win, but they don't care. They care about taking care of the people, the survivors, and and that.
Yeah. So you mentioned right at the beginning of the interview that the thing that you loved the most about working for the Disney Corporation is that they took care of their employees better than they took care of their guests, or just that they treated you really, really well. So what are some of your favorite examples of that treatment? I mean, you've told us a few things, but
when we'd go into the parks, all of the food was greatly discounted. They would encourage us to come to the parks and take advantage of everything. So every Christmas, they'd have a family Christmas party where they would shut down the parks just for the employees. And so we'd all show up, and they'd have stations where you'd go and get your picture taken, and they'd make Christmas ornaments, Disney 1995, or whatever the year was, and they'd give the ornaments to them and provide them with photographs of their families, and they'd close up the parks or they'd have a big function at Lake Buena Vista, which is a private park that Disney had off of property, and they'd put on these incredible parties for us. And when they'd have employee events, they didn't save the shrimp and the lobster and all that just for the dignitaries. It was for the employees. They'd feed us like they just took such good care of us. And that's one of my fondest memories, was going to the Disney Christmas party and being amongst an entire family of 40,000 other people who were doing the same thing, and everyone's just having a blast. And there's no lines really, because they're so courteous. And yeah, the lines are a challenge, to the public when they go, but
Yeah.
during actual events, it was just like, come and experience the park. We want you to have fun. And I think that was one of my favorite memories, was always going to the Christmas party. And as an investigator, I like when I had Margaret Thatcher, who was my principal, who I was with for a week, and she'd go and every room she went into, they had like a huge seafood tower with crab and lobster and all these amazing dishes, and I'm just watching these things get tossed into the garbage. So I'd always sneak back to the kitchen while she was eating and say, hey, slip me a few lobster tails, not to take off property, just to eat right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I had to stand at the door and just be attentive and watch, but
Yeah.
I tell the cooks, hey, here, give me a plate. Margaret Thatcher was a sweet, kind individual, though, because at the end of her stay, I had to be with her. The rule is you have to be with your principals the entire time. And the only time that you're not with them is when they go into their hotel room. And so I was sitting outside of Margaret Thatcher's room when the Disney photographers showed up to take portraits. I'm waiting outside the hallway for her. And I'd been out there about 45 minutes, and the door opens and she popped her head out and she says, Randy, would you like to get a portrait with me? Like I said, my English accent sucks.
So Margaret Thatcher had a better English accent than you?
It's like, yeah, she'd practiced. But anyway, I said I'd be honored. Yes. So she took me in and she put her arm around me, and we got several portraits taken. And then the film was sent to, is it Scotland Yard, where anyway, yeah, they had to review the film, and then they sent it back to Disney, and Disney made portraits and they put them in frames. And that's another thing that Disney does for their employees. Anytime you get an award, they don't just hand you a piece of paper. Anytime you get a portrait with a celebrity, they don't just hand you the portrait. They put it in a beautiful frame. And Margaret Thatcher had signed it. Thank you for all your help, Randy. And that's real special. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, I accompanied him every night when I was in Paris to his hotel room because I had to go in they had the K9 unit come in, and we'd search for bombs and make sure that there was nothing untoward in his room. And then he'd go on in, and he gave me this beautiful plaque for the opening of Euro Disney and wrote on it, thank you for all your help, Michael Eisner. And those are some of the things I cherish the most. I mean, I had to end up getting rid of several of these awards and plaques and things because one doesn't have room, after you've spent a lot of time at Disney. So I took pictures of them and have the pictures hanging. But those are some of the ones that I kept close to my heart because they meant a lot. It's
sure.
part of that VIP treatment that Disney gives their employees.
Megan will give you a plaque when you've done your 100th show for her.
Well, I've got 98 more to go.
I'm sure we'll get there really quickly because you have so many stories to tell.
Yes, yeah. People always say, my gosh, what haven't you done? How many jobs have you had? And I tell them, it's easier for me to tell them what I've never done than what I've done. I've never sold cars and I've never worked fast food, but I think everything else I've got covered.
Wow. Amazing. Well, Jean, do you have any parting questions that we haven't covered that you were interested in?
I think for, being a Disney detective that spilled the tea, you did a really good job, and we have been on a wild ride. And I just like to thank Randy for living his life so that we can now know him and have him share those things with us.
Well, right back at you, Gene. I so appreciate you guys allowing me to tell my story because, you know, I don't have anyone to tell it to except the book. So.
Well, I know that our viewers are going to love hearing all of these stories. And I would love it if our viewers would put in the comments, what do you want to hear from Randy next? What questions do you have for him about his time as a Disney resort manager? We already covered pretty much his time pumping porta potties, but if you want to know more about that, what else, Randy? What else would you want to have a discussion about?
You know what? I'm happy to answer any questions about Disney, the property, experiences. We've kind of just touched the tip of the iceberg. It's hard for me to, in an hour or an hour and a half, cover everything. But there's so much more that I have to tell, and experiences with different characters and the people with whom I worked. Just so many experiences, and I'm always happy to share anything. And another topic that may be of interest that we'll do sometime if you want, in my retirement, I went to work for a funeral home, and just as many secrets with the funeral home industry as there is with Disney. I'll keep
I'm
that.
sure.
And you kind of did that to learn more about empathy, right?
It was in the name of research for the books that I write. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Randy, thank you so much for sharing so many of these wonderful stories. I know that people are going to love this, and we really look forward to having you back again.
Oh, thank you, Megan. I look forward to coming back again. I sure appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and Gene today.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'll say, everybody like and subscribe and do things and have a good rest of 2025. And
yes. And Gene, thank you for being the great giant Lego piece that connects all of us together.
That's right. Connections are us.
The Connections Whisperer.
Yeah. Go visit Latter Daily Digest. Go like and subscribe over there and watch all of the fabulous interviews that Gene has.
That's right. And I really enjoy collaborating with Megan so much. I feel honored to know Megan. That's how I feel.
Well, beautiful humans, I hope you have a lovely evening, day, wherever you are in the world. And please remember to take care of each other. But most importantly, take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. Love you guys.